USCFootball.com, I'm Keely Eure here with Chris Treviño for instant analysis of USC's Wednesday practice of mock game week. Now, Chris, this was a different day for us. Out of the 17 practices we've seen so far, this was the one where we didn't see the entirety of practice. We were kicked out after 50 minutes. Kicked out is a strong word, but we were ushered out after 50 minutes. So we got to see some things. What did you take away, Chris?
First off, Keely, I just want to say welcome back to Instant Analysis.
Thank you.
For everyone watching, I'm sure they're happy to have you back. It's like having your starting quarterback back after an injury. You feel much better. You feel more confident with you in the starting lineup. But there was a moment in practice where I was just standing there and I had this realization that this was like the first game prep week we've seen in probably over a year, because obviously in spring camp it's just camp, and then fall camp, that's obviously camp as well. But here we got to see, scout teams. That was a new thing we haven't seen in a while, and but it was only, like you said, a 50-minute window, so we had to be extra observant with this window that we had. Did not get to go on top of the pool deck like we've done for all of fall camp and for all of spring, so definitely had to take in what we could in that small window.
And the practice timeline was kind of similar to what we saw in camp, at least for the offense. They did their receiving lines, individual drills, but on the defense, we got to see the scout team, which kind of gave us a window into USC's two deep.
Yeah, it was a moment because we were expecting sort of the same thing. Actually, didn't really know what to expect because, like I said, this was sort of a camp, a game week prep practice. But then I noticed the defense was moving off into the corner, and I saw the offensive line was split up, and I was like, "What's going on here?" And then I took a closer look, and I was like, "Oh, scout offense. Haven't seen that in a while." So yeah, we could basically see the first team defense, or as how Orlando was putting it together, and then the second team defense. So we had a really good look into what Orlando was thinking with his first two units. Can't really say too much about it. They don't want us telling that, but if I wrote a little piece over the weekend after the scrimmage about some predictions I had for some of these open competitions, and I feel pretty good about some of my picks. So if you want to go check that out on USCFootball.com, always got to plug the brand. But I felt pretty good about where some of my picks for that first team defense.
In that sense, no surprises for you?
Not a lot of surprises. I mean, the only one would be on the defensive line. I mean, USC obviously has a little bit of a depth issue right now at that nose tackle position. We've seen, Jacob Lichtenstein working there. Jamar Sakona was there in the first week, but he obviously was out for health and safety protocols. He came back full pads this week. So he's back in the lineup, but he's now working with the second team. So I guess they have to get him a little bit more acclimated, get him caught up a little bit since he missed most of fall camp. And so Stanley Tauafu, who Nick Figueroa promised or made me promise that I will refer to him as the Tongan Terror. That is his official status.
Okay.
I hope that is updated in his bio. But the Tongan Terror was kind of been operating as that number one nose tackle for like the last week or so. And so today he was kind of operating in that spot alongside, Tui Tuipulotu and then Nick Figueroa, the two consistents we've seen when that defensive line.
And I got to talk to Vic So'oto today. He didn't seem too concerned about USC's defensive line depth. He said his biggest concern really is just consistency. He wants to see consistency from all of his guys. Todd Orlando also talked to him as well, and he was talking about the only concern with depth there, at least for now, is getting into December and not overworking guys too early in the season. So he said they're going to have to figure out how to balance the workload and given the depth that they have. But you mentioned Nick Figueroa. Another point that Vic So'oto made was that Nick Figueroa has been very valuable as far as not only on the field but off the field. He said when Corey Foreman first got on campus, he told Corey, go get lunch with Nick Figueroa. Get everything you need to know from him. And so you got to talk to Nick. What does he have to offer to this team?
I, too, would also love to get lunch with Nick Figueroa, but he's not answering any of my texts. But Nick, I asked him about Corey individually with my one-on-one with him. He said, yeah, when I talked to him in the summer about it, and he was excited to see what he could do. And then when fall camp started, he said, it felt like Corey was trying to just get acclimated to college life. Obviously, it's a new schedule, being on your own, got to get up at 5:30, got to go to class, got to go to workouts, all this stuff. So that takes a little bit of time to get used to. And then he said, yeah, we got lunch early in camp, and he's this high-profile 5-star number one overall player, so there's a lot of build on him. But he said all he really knew was about Corey was about the football, because that's all anyone really talks about with Corey. So he wanted to focus on just getting to know Corey as a person. Like, what does he like to do off the field? What are his hobbies? What are his interests? And I think that's a great way to build trust. And obviously, as a leader that Nick Figueroa is, he's the most experienced defensive lineman. He's he's not a captain, but I would call him a pseudo captain, because he talked about how he wants the guys to be able to come to him and ask him about advice, not just about football, but life and school and anything. So I call him a pseudo-captain, and that's how you build trust as a pseudo-captain is, talk about not just football, just talk about anything besides football. So that's kind of the relationship he's been building with Corey.
Mm-hmm. And Vic Soto was very complimentary of him and kind of said exactly what you just did. Now, I watched instant analysis from yesterday. You said that this looks like the healthiest USC has been so far this fall. Did that continue today?
Yes, I would say that did continue. Thanks for watching. I don't want to even know your thoughts. I'm just going to trash that performance.
You did great. You did great.
Whatever. You're just saying that for the camera. After this, you're going to yell at me. But, yeah, it felt like the healthiest continued a little bit because I judge that by who's standing on the sideline, who's watching team warm-ups, and not a lot of phases over there. Some of the same similar guys that we've seen with the long-term injuries. Joshua Jackson, he's still out rehabbing a little bit. But Gino Quinones, who I mentioned, who was on the sideline, seemed to jump back into it. He was back to being a participant. The other main one being Drake London, who wasn't sideline watching, but I did notice that he was once again working with the trainer on the side, doing some, like team warm-up drills, like chopping at the feet, catching some balls. It was just a very one-on-one kind of warm-up. And then Malcolm Epps is the other big one. He's out of that boot, dealing with that turf toe. Helton gave it like a 3 to 4 week timeline on that, but he seems to be a little bit progressing, maybe a little bit ahead. We'll know when we talk to Helton tomorrow, but he was doing some straight line running. I saw him join the routes on air drills, and then I saw him come out, get a little Gatorade, talk with the trainer, then go back in. So it seems like he's progressing nicely from that injury.
Mm-hmm. And you noted that Keontae Ingram and Darwin Barlow practiced for the first time really yesterday. I know the day after practicing is important. They seem to come back too, right?
Yeah, they seem to be fine as well. I mean, didn't seem to have any setbacks. Seemed like they were full participants as well. So that's also a good sign to keep them going.
Mm-hmm. Now, as we mentioned, it's mock game week, so this was actually the first day that they started prep for San Jose State. I thought it was interesting talking to Todd Orlando. He said that there's kind of a system they do once they get into more game week processes. He said that from camp, as a staff, they talk about what did they do well in camp, what did they not do well. Okay, let's focus more on the plays where our defense can execute well, and then from there, narrow it down even more to go into specific things for San Jose State and each opponent from there. But I thought it was interesting because he said that benefits guys like Corey Foreman, who is trying to learn the playbook as fast as he can, but also a guy like Raesjon Davis. That's a guy who we've heard good things about from USC's coaching staff so far in fall camp. And Orlando said that both Corey Foreman, which we expected, but Raesjon Davis as well, need to play this season. And he said if we can get them more experience in the beginning of the season, then around week 6, that's when the light comes on. That's when they kind of take a next step. So it sounds like that's an important goal for this defensive staff. What have you seen from Raesjon Davis so far in camp?
That's a big statement for Orlando to throw out there.
Yeah.
So obviously, Raesjon Davis, obviously a highly decorated linebacker coming out of Mater Dei. I was interested. I brought this up on the Family Feud, our podcast. Another plug. I'm sorry. I have to do it. But I talked about how I was interested to see USC sign 2 linebackers in this class. Julian Simon, he was here in the spring. Raesjon Davis here in the summer. I was interested to see how quickly would pick that up because it seemed like Julian was a little bit overwhelmed at times. He didn't seem to be picking up as quick as I thought he would. He has grown a lot. He's gotten a lot more reps and made more plays in fall camp, but Davis seems to have really jumped at it really quickly, and I wonder if that helps that he actually got a senior year. He stayed back, played that spring season with Mater Dei, but I tracked the freshmen all camp. That was a daunting task, but I did it for you, the fans, and I got to see a lot of these guys. And Davis was a guy who maybe one day I didn't really notice him much, didn't really have him down in my notebook, but then some days he would make an incredible play. He would do something very athletic, and we can't really talk about how they've been using him, but they've been using his unique skill set. He's a guy who can play all over the field. So I think that's why he's so important. He's a guy who's very versatile, a guy who's more athletic than your traditional linebacker, and that's kind of the way the game is moving. You want these athletic linebackers who can move out a little bit wide, play sideline to sideline, especially in a defense like Todd Orlando's, which is very positionless and versatile. So Raesjon Davis, tailor-made for this defense. So I can understand why Orlando wants to get him up to speed.
Mm-hmm. We also got to talk to special teams today. Ryan talked to Sean Snyder, and apparently he was praising Ben Griffith, said that he was punting well in camp. And he also talked about Parker Lewis and the return game, right?
I believe you just violated your terms because you cannot legally talk about punts.
Instant analysis, I can't talk about punting anymore.
So you'll be probably fine. You'll get that in the mail. But I can, as a former punter myself. He said the punts were going through the roof, and he's very happy with the punt game. So that's a nice sign. And, yeah, the return game has been interesting because no Gary Bryant. Helton said maybe next week they expect him to be back. He's probably listed as a probable for the first game for the San Jose State game. So that is good news. But yeah, a lot of working with it seems like Keenan Kristen and Katie Nixon have been kind of the primary guys stepping up for the kickoff return at least. And then guys like Michael Jackson and Taj Washington have also been working in there. And then the other thing was sort of place kicking has been an issue or something we've noticed that's kind of seems a little bit off, and kind of Sean Snyder confirmed that like he hasn't been really happy with the inconsistencies with the kicking game, whether it be kickoff or field goal. So that's some technique things they're hoping to work on and maybe get worked out by the time the season opener is around. They have a little bit of time, but not a lot of time to kind of get that smoothed out.
Mm-hmm. This week in particular is kind of interesting, Chris. It's kind of the calm before the storm because we're not in fall camp anymore, or at least we're not covering fall camp anymore, and we're not covering a game on Saturday, so it's kind of the in-between. So what are you expecting for next week? And as far as schedule goes, you mentioned this earlier, but we're going to talk to Clay Helton at 8 a.m. Zoom, so that will be bright and early. We'll get some updates from him, but that's it for us this week. We won't be able to cover practice for the rest of this week, so kind of the calm before the storm.
Yeah, we get a little bit of a break, and then it's go, go, go. So I'm expecting next week to be pretty hectic. I'm expecting it to go by fast, and I expect everyone to be excited to be talking about, actually getting to play a game. I talked to Nick Figueroa about it. I asked him, like, hey, I know it's not game week, but it's mock week, but how to go, first day of prep. And he was very excited, and he really appreciated that the scout team offense came out with some juice. He said, I really appreciate that. You just found today is probably the day you find out you're on scout offense or scout defense, and you could be a little downer because you want to be with the the ones and twos. But yeah, undervalued unit is the scout team. So he was very appreciative. They came out with some juice. So it sounds like people are really fired up and excited, to be moving into a game week, official game week.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty, that's going to wrap it up for USC's Wednesday practice of mock game week. For Chris Treviño, I'm Keely Eure. For more, check out uscfootball.com.